Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. The Competition Commission has released a provisional report on the impact of digital platforms on traditional media. It has found Google to enjoy a monopoly and the unequal bargaining position of the media in South Africa. Now, according to the report, there's not been an equitable share of value between Google and news publishers in South Africa, both historically and currently affecting advertising revenues. It has also found a majority of South African consumers use social media as their primary source of news. For more on this, we're joined by SABC News reporter Katlego Legodi. Good afternoon, Katlego. Thank you very much, as always, for joining us. Let's start with what informed this investigation or inquiry, for the benefit of those who have not been following the 16 months of extensive evidence gathering. Just talk us through the conduct of the digital media that led to the Competition Commission feeling it's time to actually conduct this inquiry.
A very good afternoon to you, Mfundo, and to our viewers at home. Well, you're right. It's been 16 months of this evidence gathering whereby we see the Competition Commission conducting this sit down. It was a sit-in at some point, and then there were also a move for those in camera that would want to actually give their evidence here in terms of what has been happening here. One thing that is for certain is that over the years we've seen a shift in terms of how people consume news. So this is why then you see also big media houses playing in the digital space, in the social media space, so that at least they get the best out of the audience there. So the Competition Commission saying that as we see all of these changes, all of these developments, then there's a need now to ensure that all of this is done in line with the law. So we see them as a Competition Commission just initiating this process in line with Section 43B of the Competition Act that speaks to the impeding and distorting of some of these competitive behaviors that would come from the media and digital platform. So we see various of those players, big and small, invited here to come and give their evidence here, including even us, the SABC. We were there just talking about how we are affected by all of these developments in the news space. We have YouTube, we have Google, we have local media houses, community newspapers, community radio that were there on the ground as well, just talking about how they are affected as we see a shift globally into the digital space. And that report, it was long overdue when you listen to what the Competition Commission is telling us. And they're saying that as well, there's a need now because all of these social media platforms are increasing and there's this disinformation, misinformation, and we don't see as well big media houses getting the best out of the revenues that are collected on these platforms. Hence, we saw them initiating this process.
So we've heard that Google actually has monopolized the space. Talk to us about that.
So the findings are really vast in terms of what would be playing out in this space. But we see what was prevalent would be Google. And they say that really the engine here, the platform has been enjoying a monopoly over time in terms of revenue. So what we see happening here would be various of these news items that would end up on Google. So when you and I go onto Google and then we search, and maybe let's say we say Mfundo, and then what pops up, then we don't see that money coming to the SABC as a platform whereby Mfundo is at. So that money would be with Google. And they say that over time we've seen the revenue of these media houses dwindle, and they've really called on Google to do right. But we see them as well just talking about some of these algorithms that will play out within this space whereby you would see preferences. So there are those algorithms that would see various of these platforms get traffic directed to them compared to others. The concerns that were raised also about vernacular language. How do we actually ensure that this vernacular language is promoted where some of these platforms are concerned? So Google just cited as a culprit here, but including various of these social media spaces. YouTube as well was in that fray. We saw them also calling on Meta to ensure that when you look at it, there is actually equitable access to some of the content that would play out on their platform. But at the same time, we see them saying that this would come with a slap of about 300 to 500 million rand that will be needed here from Google year in, year out. That would be going into various of these media houses
as
reimbursement, basically to more than or less pay them for some of these monies that have been lost over time. But this is not the final of it, because we see them saying that this is just a provisional report. We're expecting to see the final report, and some of these these remedies then would find meaning when they release the final report. But we see them saying that this provisional report then gives us a sense of what has been happening here and the responsibility of these platforms going forward.
So speaking about this process now, we have the provisional report, there's recommendations there. What happens now? We understand that at this point, you'll have stakeholder engagement. You'll also have an opportunity for the public to comment. How do they go about doing that?
You're right. So this moves, it's actually a process when you look at it, because they're saying that they would give this process about 6 weeks of just releasing this report. When you look at it as well, the outing of the out part of this, the outside part of this report would tell you that it's a public report.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that is in that report that would see more or less some of these organizations compromised, because they believe that the public is the ones that are interacting with some of these platforms, the ones that are using and consuming news in this particular manner, will need to also add their voice. So there is a link that is available on the Competition Commission site, but they're also looking at ensuring that they go back to these 40 stakeholders to speak to them. Some of them were there on the ground in terms of the release of this provisional report, where they're already interacting with this report. Earlier on, speaking to SANEF, they've really been scathing in terms of addressing the issue of misinformation and disinformation on some of these platforms. So we see them just welcoming this report and looking forward to this process that lies ahead. We are told here that at least in about 5 to 6 months, we'd see a final report tabled here that would be in line with the law, and then we'll see some of those recommendations binding going forward. So at least there's the leveling of this playing field.
On the face of it, it sounds as though it's a very progressive report that will allow various media houses to receive their equitable share. Katlego, as always, thank you very much for that reportage. That's SABC News reporter Katlego Legodi speaking to us.